Welcome to another episode of Wealth Flow. In this episode, I am joined by Mel Kovacevic, the founder of The Seed Cycle, and we dive into some really powerful and timely themes. We talk about how society's current structure clashes with women's hormones, which lead a lot of women to exhaustion and burnout. And we discuss how we can realign ourselves for better health and overall well-being. We also talk about balancing entrepreneurship with our hormonal health, along with the critical role of nature and using nutritional medicine to address the global health crisis. We also talk about why shifting away from the hustle culture to a more feminine and flow-based approach can actually help you and your business and allow it to be more sustainable over longer periods of time. Now, you may be thinking this episode is just for the ladies, but if you are a gentleman, don't go anywhere because this episode is so full of value that I know it can help every human being. Now, before we dive in, let me tell you a little bit more about this incredible woman. Mel is the founder of The Seed Cycle, a business which I adore. She is a functional nutrition and EFT practitioner with her expertise in functional nutrition, intuitive eating practices, and EFT tapping. Mel has helped hundreds of women restore hormone balance using food as medicine, a subject about which she is deeply passionate. Mel's dedication to empowering women to reach their full potential is reflected in the Seed Cycle, which provides a done-for-you seed cycling solution. With the support and encouragement of her family, the Seed Cycle has flourished. Without further ado, let's dive into this episode. All right. Well, welcome, Mel. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me, Corinne. I'm so excited to chat. So much to talk about.
I know. I think we have a lot of juicy questions here and lots of juicy topics. So thank you so much for your time and happy full moon.
It is, yes.
Perfect timing. Let's start off with getting to know you. I'd love for you to share your journey that led you to the creation of your beautiful business, The Seed Cycle, and how your passion for functional nutrition and hormone balance evolved into this incredible mission-driven business that you have. And I'd also love for everyone to hear more about how The Seed Cycle extends beyond just the products, but the core message that you share to women through your work.
Yeah, I would love to. I guess I'll start off by saying I was never interested in hormone health and periods and cycling and the moon. And I started studying functional nutrition because I was in this place where I had a terrible relationship with food and my body. I spent my whole teens and most of my 20s dieting and then really just putting on more weight and in that binge restrict cycle. And I got to this point where I was like, well, I'm going to study nutrition because if I study nutrition, then I'll learn how to lose weight. Like that was my only motive going into it.
Wow.
And I came across functional nutrition and it completely changed my whole perspective. And for those who don't know, functional nutrition has this beautiful philosophy of vitalism, and that is that our bodies have this innate intelligence, and all we need to do is give it the right resources to heal, adapt, and thrive. And for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, I have the answers. I have these hunger and fullness cues I can listen to, not that lemon detox or cabbage soup or, you know, those horrible, horrific restrictive diets that I was trying to follow.
Yeah.
And then along with EFT, which is emotional freedom techniques, or tapping, as you guys might know, I was able to completely change my whole life. And I really, I guess for the first time in my life, felt like I was comfortable within myself, my relationship with food really turned to one of like this belief in food as medicine and connecting back to my own roots. I have a Croatian heritage, and I grew up with my grandma in the garden. My grandma always cooking these beautiful foods and fermenting foods and pickling and making wine and making, and for so long I was like, didn't want to go to family functions because it was like, oh my God, there's gonna be so much food. Like I just have to try not to eat, try not to eat, try not to eat. And so I was able to embrace this whole part of me and my culture. And this is where functional nutrition, I remember one of the first subjects was around culture and tradition and its role in nutrition. And I was like, yes, like I was just trying to be like calorie in, calorie out, macros, like, and it just was not working for me. And so then it was actually after I had my daughter that I had this newfound confidence. And I remember thinking, I can birth a baby. And I had a really difficult breastfeeding journey, and I just persisted, and I was so stubborn. I didn't know I had that in me. I was like, no, I want to breastfeed. Let's make this happen. And I was like, if I can do that, I can do anything. I'm going to start a business. And
I love it.
So I started consulting, and I started this, which I thought in the beginning was this holistic approach with functional nutrition and EFT. But it was probably about a year in that I realized I was missing this huge component, which is hormone health, because every single female I spoke to, they would say things like, Mel, I was doing really well, and then PMS hit, cravings hit. I had clients who were on the pill, didn't want to be, but was so scared to get off. I had clients going through perimenopause, and I'm like, and like weight loss as well. And I was like, I knew like if we didn't address the underlying root cause of the hormone imbalance, we're not going to get to the goal. So I was like, right, started researching hormones, and that's where I came across speed cycling.
Wow, what a journey. And we're going to get definitely more into it later. I feel like it's an awakening where people are starting to, as women are starting to realize the importance of it and the effects that it has on them. And I think we're starting to realize we don't really quite fit into society. We don't quite fit into this matrix that has been created for us that we call our work everyday life, and something's not right here. So it's really beautiful to see that awakening. And, through your business, that's such an awareness that I see you sharing with people. And can you explain a little bit more to people that maybe don't know what the EFT tapping? I know very little on it, but want to hear more.
Gosh, it's incredible. It's now used by some of the world's leading trauma experts, and there are hundreds of studies. When I came across EFT, I came across the tapping solution, and it gives you little instructions on how to use tapping. And all it is using acupressure points on our face and our bodies. And what that does is and you're tapping with your fingers. So, usually in Chinese medicine with acupressure or acupuncture, they're using needles, whereas this is the research shows that tapping with your fingers is having that same response in terms of signaling to the amygdala, which is that fight or flight, that you're safe. So now there's research that shows EFT reduces cortisol by 43%, which is incredible. And at the time, I didn't actually even know that you could work with a practitioner or become a practitioner. I just started doing this tapping thing that I first heard on a podcast, and it was Gala Darling, and she was talking about how she used EFT to completely heal herself of her eating disorder. And that's when I was in this like in-between place where I had changed that perspective around food, but I was still having these binge eating behaviors, and I still had this constant thought of I need to be skinny, I need to be skinny, I need to be skinny. And EFT helped me get to that underlying core belief of, for me, it was I need to be skinny to be loved. So no wonder I was dieting.
Yeah.
So I would really, if you're interested, I would look up the tapping solution. They have incredible resources. And it's kind of like, EFT, there's two parts of it. There's the EFT that you can do yourself if you're feeling anxious, stressed. If I've just had a disagreement with my husband and I'm just feeling all the, that feeling in my body of like anger or whatever it is, I can go away and do some tapping and I can bring that down and send that signal of safety to my body. Then you can also work with a practitioner. And this is really for, the heavy stuff, the, big T or little t trauma. If you really have some childhood events or beliefs that that, it's just something that you need support with. When I started EFT, it's kind of like where seed cycling is now. Like there's a couple of studies, there's some people talking about it, some experts. Whereas now, 10 years later, EFT is just so well known. And like I'll go into a room and I'll say how many people know about EFT tapping, and most of the room will put up their hand. Like it's changed so much in 10 years. So I'm excited to see. I think that same progression is going to happen with seed cycling, because at the moment when I say who's heard of seed cycling, maybe like 3 people out of 20 will put up their hands.
Yeah. Well, that's so interesting because I mean, I can speak for myself here. Like I know of it. I actually, myself, like sometimes in my morning rituals, especially, I just kind of work with it intuitively. And there will be some times that I'm like, oh yeah, like I saw this holistic influencer doing that tapping thing. And when I do it, it feels so good. So I'm just going to do it myself without even actually knowing the depths of it. And it sounds like you can, as per with anything and everything, right? You can get really intentional with it. You can actually use it to your advantage and as a tool to then work through some deeper stuff. So that's really cool. I would definitely be looking more into that and learning more on that. And I feel like I know more on seed cycling, but probably because I've met you. And so I feel like I've learned more on that side of things than EFT tapping, right?
It's the worst name.
Because I'm in the financial space and I talk about ETFs all day long, exchange traded funds. So I'm like, wait, two worlds, got to split the two apart.
In the practitioner world, we're all just like, why, out of all the names they could have chosen, why EFT?
Okay, thank you. It's not just me. I'm glad.
And then because the actual physical like tapping looks strange as well. So I'm like, the whole thing is just, really hard to sell to someone. But, like it's, and then when I used to work with clients, like the good thing about EFT is like, you don't need to believe in it for it to help you. So, I would just be like, look, I'll show you some of the research. I'll tell you a little bit about it, but let's just do it, because then you'll feel that shift and you can quite quickly feel like 10 out of 10 stress to a 2 within a couple of minutes. And then you feel that shift and you're like, okay, like I get it now.
Yeah. Well, I feel like once I've dove in more into that, we're going to have to do a next episode on talking more on that.
A guided EFT session together and like everyone can follow along. It's really cool. And you can experience it yourself. Yeah.
I love that. Well, everybody stay tuned already for the next episode with Mel. We're one question in. I love it. Coming back to, you and your business, and especially as an entrepreneurial woman that has a family, has kids, has a husband, how have you managed to balance the demands of growing your business while also honoring your hormone cycles, as it's something that you obviously know? And I also feel like, even in my experience, it's one thing knowing something and then it's like the putting it into practice. There's that gap in between, right? So how has that journey been for you? And specifically, how did you navigate that intense energy and focus that's required when you are at the startup phase of a business? Because it's one thing when your business is up and going and flowing, but it's that getting it up and running that takes that extra energy and effort. How are you able to do that while keeping mindfulness around what you know around hormones?
Yeah, well, so I guess I ran Functional Health Canberra in the beginning, not understanding my hormones at all. And that was a much smaller business compared to running Seed Cycle with my hormones, and I guess understanding my phases and what I need in each phase. And it is just so much easier. I don't think I would be at burnout a lot more if I was still living, in that other world of just trying to get things done. Whereas now, I guess the way everything is scheduled around my hormones. And I know some people are like, well, I can't do that, but there are things you can do. So I know that if I have a big event, a big workshop that I'm running or a podcast that I know, like, I really want to nail this, especially if I'm talking about something new, I schedule that at ovulation because I'm going to be sparkly, I'm going to be bright, I'm going to be confident. And then in my luteal, so that premenstrual phase, I don't have as much energy. I need breaks in between. I need to be out in nature at least once a day. I need to take more for myself. And so I do that when I'm in my menstrual phase. I'm super creative. So I'm on Canva, I'm writing blogs, like even just like things like paying bills are really hard, and like the tedious stuff and just so difficult for me. I leave that all for my follicular phase because that's my get shit done phase. I enjoy it then. It's easy. I'm ticking things off. I've got high energy. And so I know who I am in each phase, and I use that to my advantage. And gosh, like it is so much easier. I am more productive now than I ever have been. So, I do, and I guess this all sits under cycle syncing, which was coined by Elisa Vitti. So she wrote the book In the Flow. So that's another great resource if you want to understand more about this. And we can talk about like cycle syncing in terms of nutrition because that's when seed cycling fits into it. But your question about like the energy that it requires at the start of the business, like I don't know where that came from. That didn't come from me. Like it was just like, things just aligned and it was, I look back at that time, like I remember my husband saying to me, we had this conversation in the kitchen when I was grinding up the seeds for my clients and packaging them. And he said, what are you up to? And I was like, oh, well, it's this seed cycling thing. I'm just making it easier for my clients. And he went away and did some research and he came back and he goes, there are thousands of people Googling seed cycling every day. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's amazing. Like it's been so one of the best things that I implement with my female clients. And he said, there's no one doing this in Australia. Like you're creating like a done for you solution. He's like, we should start another business. I'll help you out. Like let's invest and let's go big. 3 months we were live. Like that day I registered the business name. I'm like, I looked up what was available. The seed cycle, great, done. Open the bank account. Started like looking for the containers. Like, can I, because I was already ordering like 15-kilo bags of certified organic seeds. I'm like, just order more seeds, get all the approvals. Like I think health came in that next week and did all the approvals. And it was just madness. But I was like, everything just clicked. And I was like, I can't believe I didn't think of this.
Do you remember if you were in your follicular phase that day or
phase I was in? That was
just alignment. I think it was just click. This is it. This is my purpose. I feel in flow. I just got to do it.
And like, my kids were so little then. This was 3 years ago. I'm like, I don't know what that was, but it didn't feel like it was me. It felt like this was, and I say this all the time. I feel like the universe has the seed cycles back. And sometimes I'm the one getting in the way, like I'm blocking it.
That's a big conversation. I will say though, hold on, before we get to that, hold that thought. Is it the seed cycle's birthday?
Yes, it is.
It's a Leo. That makes me so happy. From a Leo. A happy birthday, seed cycle. How many years?
3 years.
3 years. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Must be an amazing feeling. I do believe that even though we are human beings living in this 3D experience, and we do sometimes get in the way of ourselves. All of us do. I think no matter how successful you are, we're always in some way, shape, or form. I mean, that's the journey of life, constantly learning and growing and trying to get better every day. But when something is for you, when you are living in that highest purpose, in that mission of what is just meant for you, it's like, call it God, call it source energy, call it the universe, whatever everybody believes in, it just makes it happen for you in one way or another.
Yeah, I feel that. I get goosebumps. I see that every day, just even things that have aligned. Like we had to move from packing in the kitchen, and then we built a little factory in the spare room in our house, and then it was just we couldn't keep up. And I was like, how are we going to find someone to manufacture? I don't want big quantities made. I don't want to mass produce. I need to make sure that the integrity of the nutrients is still there. I want certified organic. I want gluten-free. And then all the factories we were going to is just like, just no way that I would go there. And then I did an interview with my mentor, Cindy O'Meara. So many people would know her in Australia. She's an incredible nutritionist. And at the end, she said, Mel, who's packing the seeds for you? And I said, I am. And she said, I own the packing company. She goes, I can do this for you, because she has her own line of products. And I was like, what? And like, she's the only person in the world I think I would trust with this. So it was just like things like that have happened so many times, and it was so easy, and they took over, and it's been incredible. And like, yeah, you just like, you worry about things and you kind of make it harder than it needs to be. I've had these insane moments, like, who would have ever thought that she would be the one to manufacture? And she was my teacher. So it was such a full circle moment.
I love that. I love that. The law of least resistance. It just all flows to you. And I feel like being a woman, I mean, I speak as being a woman and a woman experience. I just think it's that feminine creative energy that just allows everything to just come on in when it's aligned for you. So that's just awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I have like little goosebumps from that. For those that don't know, what are the phases and how does seed cycling help these phases?
Yes. So in our menstrual cycle, we have 4 distinct phases. This is called our infradian rhythm, like a 28-day cycle, whereas men's hormones operate on a 24-hour circadian rhythm. So it is very different. And this was a piece of information that I just wish I knew when I was younger, because, it makes sense. Like, one week I can train a certain way, eat a certain way, feel a certain way, and then the next week I'm completely different. And the things are working that week don't work the next week. And that's because my hormones are different. And so the 4 phases, the first phase is our menstrual phase. And so this is when our uterus lining is shedding, we're bleeding. The next phase is our follicular phase. And this is where we are preparing for ovulation. Ovulation is halfway through the cycle, usually around day 14. This is when we're fertile. And then from there, the 4th phase is our luteal phase, or our premenstrual phase. And this is when our hormones are declining, getting ready for that shed again. And so for the purposes of seed cycle, we break the menstrual cycle in half, so into 2 phases. So we have phase 1, which is our menstrual follicular phase, phase 2, which is our ovulation luteal phase. And the whole concept of seed cycling is that we have different nutrient requirements in different phases, and different hormones need support. So in our first phase, we're really looking at supporting rising estrogen levels to prepare that ovulation to occur. And so in the first phase for seed cycling, we're having flaxseed and pumpkin seed. So these seeds are so simple. And like I say to people, you probably already have them in your pantry. We just want to make sure they're certified organic, and that's because we don't want any pesticides that actually have endocrine disrupting chemicals that kind of are going against what we're trying to do with supporting our hormones. And we grind up the seeds, and that's so your body can absorb the nutrients. And then we're also having a therapeutic dose. So this is different to, I guess, if you're having seeds just in your diet, that's amazing. But we're using seed cycling as a hormone modulation practice. And so you're having 1 tablespoon of each seed ground up each day. And so this is where we pre-package it for you in that first half. And it's just incredible when you understand the nutrients in these seeds, like flaxseed, pumpkin seed, really high dose of omega-3s, your full recommended daily dose, actually lignans, which are a form of phytoestrogens, and they're really supporting that production and elimination of estrogen, zinc, magnesium. And, like, I think sometimes we think we're smarter than nature, like there's so many supplements that, it's like, oh, we've extracted this and we've recreated this vitamin and we've done, but nature knows. And this is why seed cycling works so well, because our bodies recognize the nutrients. And I'm sure there's more nutrients, and it does more than I could ever comprehend, or research will ever uncover. But what we do know, and what is backed by science, is those seeds, particularly flaxseed, and that hormone modulation. Plus you've got the fibers as well, and that's really helping that detoxification of the excess hormones. And then you move into phase 2, so ovulation luteal phase, and this is when we're having sesame seed and sunflower seeds. Again, we grind them up. It's a therapeutic dose of a tablespoon ground of each. And what women say, within the first month, my skin feels really bright. I'm having less breakouts. My digestion is feeling really good. I'm feeling less bloated. A lot of that has to do with the high vitamin E in the sunflower seeds, again, from nature. And then we've got calcium, we've got selenium in the seeds, more lignans, omegas, more fibers. And the phase 2 seeds are actually higher in calories, and we need more calories in the second and half of our cycle, because we need that extra energy to detox those and eliminate those hormones. So it's just so clever in terms of how the nutrients are working, but also that bigger picture of like body literacy. Because to seed cycle, you need to understand your phases and you need to track your cycle. And this is really, really important, because this is what is also going to really help in terms of the hormone balance. You know, like you've got the nutrients, but to really support your hormones and have those hormones nice and balanced, and then adding something in that's going to help. Like, I just love that. Like, coming from that place of scarcity and like, what kind of dairy, kind of gluten, kind of refined sugar, like TikTok said eggs are bad. Like, come on.
I know. What are we meant to eat anymore?
It's, you know, focus on what you can have, what is going to nourish you. Like, it's then you're coming from a place of abundance and like true health.
I love it. I love it. And I can say that from when I learned about seed cycling from you and I started to use your products, which are also so cool because, I mean, especially around, you know, a certain time, I want chocolate. And so that I could make the little brownies, and I would be like, every day I'd have my little dose and be like, no, this is healthy. I'm seed cycling and I'm having my little bit of chocolate. Like, this is really good. Like, it's been a really beautiful, I can say, especially awareness. Like, it has helped me personally be like, oh, okay, like I know which phase I'm at. I track it now. I have an app called Stardust. Do you know that one?
No, but I'm going to look it up.
It's called Stardust, and it's connected with the moons. Like, so it will tell you when the new moons and full moons are coming, which I would love to share a little bit of the woo-woo stuff. I love the woo-woo stuff. So, and so it helped me with that awareness. And it's actually so cool because Alex, my husband, now knows too when I'm in what phase. And at breakfast, so we always have our breakfast, and, you know, whether it's like with smashed avocados or sometimes we'll do like egg tacos, he'll be like, babe, what phase are you in? Which seeds do you need? So it's nice that he knows too, because as we know, our mood can change during, but it's more so because our energy levels change during those different phases.
And, you know, I often think about it from a male's perspective. Like, you know, their hormones are the same every day. They peak at the same time. And so from an outsider, they're looking at us and it's like we're in our menstrual phase and we're like really, for a lot of women, you kind of more turning inwards. We're a bit daydreamy. You can feel really grounded. But, you know, energy is not as high. But then when you move into the follicular phase, usually like that last day of bleed, your energy just goes through the roof. So and for me, I am like a crazy person. Like, I'm like, I want everything done now. I want it done perfectly. Otherwise, I'm going to burn the house down. Like, there's no messing with me in that phase. So, like, you know, they're watching that, and then you go to ovulation and you're just sparkling and you want to hug them. I don't care about the to-do list anymore. And then you move into premenstrual and it's kind of like, get away from me. I need my space. Like, I don't have as much energy. So if they don't understand that, you know, it can look pretty full on. And that's just with balanced hormones. Like, when your hormones are out of whack, like, that's then a whole nother conversation. So I think that education for them and just them understanding it is so beautiful. And then they can support us in what we need. And yeah, I love that so much. And seed cycling, again, is like such a great way to introduce the phases and our requirements in the phases.
Definitely. No, definitely. And before my next question, let's really quickly talk about the moons.
Yes, I love talking about these. And I used to apologize and kind of really try to over-explain it, but I'm not anymore because this is really, really important. With seed cycling, if you have a regular menstrual cycle, you seed cycle with your own menstrual cycle because that's your dominant rhythm. So because as human beings, we're cyclical. And so you're having phase one from, like I was saying, from your day one of your period to ovulation, and phase two from ovulation back to the start of your period. And so if your cycle is around that 28 day, it could be anywhere from a couple of days before or after, and it can fluctuate, that's fine. But for so many women, they lost their periods, they're on the pill, they're going through perimenopause, their cycles are irregular, they don't know where they're at with their cycle, postmenopausal, they're pregnant, they're breastfeeding, so their cycle hasn't returned. Like, so many cases where we use the moon to seed cycle. So we're having phase one from a new moon and phase two from a full moon. And this is where we are bringing in some of this ancient wisdom. And there is another a company that does a similar seed cycling products, and they don't use the moon phases. And I find that so disappointing. And I understand maybe it was just a bit too hard. So they're like, just start whenever and, do 2 weeks, 2 weeks. No, like we need to honor this ancient practice of syncing our cycles with the moon. And it's no coincidence that the moon phases and a menstrual cycle are the same length. So what we often find is, particularly for women who are irregular, or if they are trying to transition off the pill as well, which seed cycling is a wonderful protocol to prepare your body to get off the pill. We seed cycle with the moon, and then after a couple months, I'll notice that their own cycle has regulated, and then they can switch over and seed cycle with their own cycle. Postmenopausal as well, like women will say, well, I don't have those hormones anymore, so I don't have to worry about it. You're still a woman, you still cycle, and now your dominant cycle is the moon. And then they'll come back and be like, oh my gosh, Mel, you got me looking at the moon and I feel so much more grounded. My digestion's better. My skin's better. I feel more energy. I'm sleeping better.
Yeah.
And so once it's like our body just loves that rhythm of the moon, and there's just so many benefits as well as the nutrients of the seeds.
Yeah. I love it. And, I love to study history. If you had told college version of Corinne that she would have loved to study history, she would have been like, you're crazy. But now that I'm older, I love studying history. There's so much that we can learn from it. And even when you go back to the biblical days, we used the moon, we used the sun even to create our months. We used nature for so much. And I really do think that they're just forgotten practices. I mean, yes, now we've got clocks and we've got calendars and we've got all these other things. But I still feel like, especially when we're talking about our biology, our nature, we've still got these beautiful tools that we've just forgotten. And all we need to do is just look outside and be like, oh, there's a full moon. And this is the next phase that I'm going to be going in with my seed cycling, little things that can just make such a difference. So.
And I also love history, and I've spent a lot of time researching menstrual cycles and that when did this whole period taboo start? And we used to bleed together on a new moon and ovulate together on a full moon. And there's a beautiful book called The Red Tent, and so women used to go into the red tents. And yes, it's fictional, but so much of it is rooted in that wisdom and that celebration of cycles. That's slowing down and honoring the bleed. And this is where I think about what happened, where it got to the place where women will say to me, I got my period when I was 13 and I thought I was dying because I saw blood. I had no idea what it was. No one told me.
Oh my God.
We went from this beautiful red tent, and yes, there is there's another dark side to that where I won't talk about, but let's just talk about the beautiful honoring of women's menstrual phases. And that was taught to, by aunties, by grandmothers, by mothers to girls and celebrated. To then it was just a complete taboo where it wasn't spoken about at all. And, hide the pads, don't tell anyone you got your period, to women or girls not even being taught or know anything about it, to now I hopefully see, a shift where it's not secret women's business. It's not a taboo. It is actually, spoken about openly, and women are encouraged to understand their cycle. And, isn't it crazy that we've only got language now like follicular and luteal? And I didn't know, I hadn't even heard those words before. I thought a period was when menstrual cycles when you bled, and that was it.
Yep. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah. And like I mentioned, I do feel like there is shifts occurring in this, which is really beautiful to have it come back. And I guess that kind of leads to my next question. There is this growing realization that our society's structure is currently 24 hours, 7 days a week. And that doesn't align with the natural 28-day hormonal cycle of a woman. How do you think that this mismatch has impacted women's health and well-being, and maybe even their mental well-being? And with many women today experiencing burnout, and we're seeing it more and more, we see it all over social media. Women are just exhausted, they're tired. Do you see a connection between these struggles and the societal expectations that are placed on women in a world that doesn't account for their unique hormonal rhythms?
Yeah, well, the stats are now globally 90% of women will struggle with a hormone imbalance, and it's 5% in men. So that tells you everything you need to know. Our world isn't set up for our delicate hormones, and, it is the structure, it's the chemicals, the endocrine disrupting chemicals as well that mimic estrogen in our bodies. When we speak to our practitioners that are doing bloods, they're seeing this estrogen's through the roof for many women, and they're not producing enough progesterone. And then that's causing all those symptoms. And, I think part of it too is that culture of like, periods suck. It's part of being a woman. You just got to put up with it. Your skin's going to break out. You're going to be bloated. You're going to be in pain. That's not true. They're all, it's common, but it's not normal. They're all signs that there's an imbalance. And so, I think something's got to give. Like that 90% is really scary. And this is when, I used to talk about like gut microbiome and all these other things when it comes to health. I only talk about hormones because this is where we start. This is where we get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of improving our longevity, our health, reducing symptoms, and understanding our cycle and doing what we can. And I understand it's really hard, and, particularly like with the culture of that hustle culture, and you've got to keep you've got to keep going and work hard to get ahead and all of that. I just feel like it's bullshit. Like I was saying in the beginning, like I am more productive than I've ever been. Like the seed cycle has grown hugely, and I haven't burnt out since I have had the seed cycle, and that is all because I really honor my hormones and my phases, and I work with my body, not against it.
And so you feel like, for women, if they were to make the switch from today, it would be first step awareness. Like you need to understand what's going on, and you need to start being aware. I don't know if there's like another word for it, aware of your phases and where you're at, and start learning to work with those phases, which then, kind of goes to this whole, we've got to reprogram our belief around hustle culture. Because if you had known me, like even just 3 years ago, I literally within like my business, I was like, we're team no sleep. We don't sleep until I was like the peak of like, if you don't work hard, like it like makes my whole shoulders and body cringe now. But because I didn't know, I wasn't aware, I didn't understand about the differences. So in saying that, what would you say to a woman who maybe is currently stuck? I'm going to use that word because it's speaking to old Corinne. Corinne was stuck in the idea, in the belief that hustle culture is it. If you want to have success, especially in business, you've got to keep up with the men. You've got to hustle, you've got to grind, you've got to work hard until. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, I think firstly, just explaining the difference between hustle culture and doing hard things. That's different. I do hard things every day, uncomfortable things. I struggle with things that give me anxiety, like, speaking to 70 people, like podcasts, reaching out to stores, will you stock my product? You know how hard that is for me? I do the hard things.
Yeah.
But that's different to hustling. And it's a different energy. Because when I do something hard, like when I reached out to Cindy O'Meara to do an interview with her, that was so hard. She's like, in my mind, she's up here, she's, my teacher, and I'm asking to interview her, that was so hard. And then what came from that was a conversation and now a manufacturer. So hard things, I would just start to, understand the difference, and not being in that hustle culture anymore doesn't mean that you're not going to do those hard things, but you have more capacity to really do those hard things because you're not just hustling for the sake of hustling. But what would you say to that 3 years ago, Corinne?
First of all, I would add that the hard things get easier. And I wouldn't even call them, this is where we can step into neurolinguistics programming. And it's like, how do we define words, right? Every day we're doing the uncomfortable things. We're doing the things that we might not want to do. But that's where it's like, okay, I've stepped into surrender. I've understood that in order to be able to achieve success in the business space, I do need to reach out to people. I do need to do the talking in front of lots of people, no matter how uncomfortable. But it does you become more used to it and it starts to become more comfortable. I don't think it's ever 100% comfortable. What I would say to Corinne of 3 years ago is, I think, first of all, giving her the facts. Because I feel like, and maybe this is where I came from, it was very much about like the logic, the masculine side of the brain. Like, I want to know facts and numbers, and I didn't want to hear the woo-woo stuff. I didn't want to hear but you can just flow and everything will magically come to you. Like, I remember when people would say to me, Corinne, like, you just need to slow down. I'd be like, no. Like, my dreams are up here and I've got to do all the things. So I think I would start off with giving the facts, explaining like the science behind it, explaining you can do this 3 phases. Here are case studies, which I know is something that you share a lot of as well. And I think it's so beautiful to bridge the gap to then being like, look at how much healthier and happier and more abundant you will be. That's where I think I would start, because it's definitely, even for me, when I have been one of those women who got to the end of her 20s and completely burnt out, crashed, had to figure out through a million different loopholes that eventually, like, it was, my functional medicine doctor was like, it's your hormones. You're not crazy. You're not losing it. You're not lazy. Your hormones are just completely imbalanced. And that's not okay for somebody in their 20s.
Yeah. And you can't be at the best in your business and be performing in a way that you want to be if you have that imbalance.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
And it's not sustainable.
No.
Because the 6-figure business that I created from that energy crashed and burned with me. That's definitely something I would say to Corinne 3 years ago. I just want to let you know that the energy in which you're creating something from now will be the energy that you continue to have forever, or for as long as you want to have this business. Is it sustainable? And it just wasn't. And now, being in the awareness and the understanding, in the flow, the most, like you explained, the most wild, crazy things just align and pop into your lap. And you're like, where did that come from? But cool, I'll take it. Thanks, God. What about the men? Do you think that the traditional 9 to 5 work structure is also leaving men tired and burnt out, even though it's supposedly aligned with their biological rhythm?
I don't know. I guess I look at my husband and he's made so many changes in the last couple of years, and he is really the best I've ever seen him, like mental health-wise, health-wise. And, and I think those changes have been taking better care of him. Like, he's just taking better care of himself. He's getting out in nature, all the things that we need. He's getting sunshine. And I think, but prior to that, like, he just didn't understand the importance of that. And he was in that 9 to 5, and he still is, but he's, out at lunchtime, he's going around the lake for a walk, or he's walking up one of the mountains. He's invested in his health, and, he's gone down the biohacking track, which is really fun for me because I get he just bought like a PEMF mat, and I'm like, and I think the way he was living before wasn't sustainable. Whereas this, it's beautiful to watch him go on his own journey. So I think, men kind of too have to, not have to, but, think about like reconnecting with nature, with their bodies, doing, their own work. And I think business forces you to do that. I don't know if you found what like business forces you to do that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, and you've kind of already explained it through your story, that women really have a big influence on their significant other. I mean, and vice versa, but like the saying, like the man is the head, but the woman is the neck. And, I know sometimes that might like trigger people, but I think it's really beautiful because you can't have the neck and the head without the other. They're missing key functions otherwise without the other. So I think that, for any woman listening, I'm sure this will inspire your spouse once you get into it. And then for any man listening, maybe then that will go and inspire your woman or to flow into it. But I do see more and more men also getting tired and exhausted I think it's more of a conversation of overworked and underpaid and the types of level of responsibilities that they're given, and there's just not an equal energy exchange. And so it goes beyond then that 9 to 5 because they're coming home and waking up with all these thoughts in their head, and their day then ends up being 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And so I think it's a bit of a different conversation for men, and there's a lot going on for them too.
Yeah, absolutely. I did find there was this point where I had done my own work and nothing was ever said between us, but there was this energy of like, I need to do my own work, otherwise she's going to leave me behind, because she's like on this path of being her best self. And like, that was never a conversation had, but definitely this energy I felt, which was, really cool.
I love it. It's so inspiring for each other. Yeah. We're seeing more women struggle with fertility and pregnancy. Do you believe that this is related to the way that society operates, and especially all these hormonal health issues?
It's such a tough topic. I don't have all the answers, but I see it and it's heartbreaking. In saying that, we have had so many incredible success stories. I've got emails with like positive pregnancy test photos, ultrasound photos. Like, it's just so overwhelming. Like, it's so overwhelming. I can't even like bring words to it properly. But, and like I've said, like, I'm pregnant. It was a seed. Like, I can't, thank you so much. And only you and my husband know. This is all through email. I've never met this person. Like, I just wanted to tell you first. And it makes sense when you are supporting a healthy menstrual cycle, healthy ovulations, and that's going to increase your chances of fertility or conception. But, I always say, like, I would never want someone to like start seed cycling and think, oh, I'm just going to try this and not go to see a specialist or a GP. Like, no, seed cycling is an adjunct. You do your seed cycling, but you also work with your doctors or your specialists or your naturopath or build your team because there's not one solution, just like there isn't just one problem. I think it is a combination of, our life, our stress, like cortisol. There's a saying, when cortisol goes high, progesterone goes low. And then also like the endocrine disrupting chemicals and the toxic load. Like, we're living through the most toxic time in the world's history. And so, for me, it's just, and I guess also fertility isn't really, or even just understanding your cycle or the benefits of ovulation and producing progesterone isn't really spoken about outside of fertility, but it needs to be, because these hormones are really important for our moods, for our sleep, for bone health, for mental health. So, I think it's just like back to where we started of like that understanding our cycle, understanding our hormones and how we operate as women. And then that's setting us up for success in terms of having that healthy cycle, healthy ovulation, increasing chances of, conception.
Yeah. And what about food? Because I know you talk a lot about nutrition as medicine. And I also have heard you address that this is one of the key issues in our global health crisis. Can you talk a little bit about first of all, maybe what you believe is the global health crisis that we are experiencing, and then how does food or nutrition play a role in this?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of the global health crisis that isn't mentioned is, because we talk about we hear cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, autoimmune conditions, but the hormone imbalance, like that 90% of women needs to be included in that. I think, the companies that are manufacturing ultra processed foods have a lot to answer for. And, for me and my family, we just don't buy those foods. I look at the ingredients and I'm just not willing to anymore. As soon as I see all those additives, the preservatives, the highly processed canola, vegetable oils, the emulsifiers, like our bodies don't recognize those man-made ingredients. And I had someone say to me, oh, it's just all too hard, Mel. Like the only way you can do that is just to go live on a farm and make your own food and grow your own food. It's not. You can make informed decisions. Like I still go to the supermarket. If I'm buying an almond milk, I pick up like 2 different brands. I look at the ingredients. One has like emulsifier, vegetable oil, gum, 2-2-0. The other one has filtered water, cane sugar, and almonds. Like I'm going to buy that one. It's always about, for me, just making that decision. And the same goes with endocrine disrupting chemicals. I've used up a moisturizer. I didn't really love it anyway. I look at the ingredients and, oh gosh, there's a lot of things in there that I don't recognize. I'm going to go find a cleaner replacement. Like simple choices like that help and make a huge difference. We're not aiming for perfect. We're never going to get perfect at this because of the world we live in, unless we do go live on a farm and grow our own food. But I have seen how these little decisions and turning back to real food. I hear a lot of the health in the health and wellness world at the moment, people saying, oh, well, the soil is so depleted, like our food doesn't have nutrients anymore. So, what's the point? That's not true. Like we test the nutrients in the seeds and those nutrients are high. So I feel like that's a bit of an excuse not to eat real food. But, I even just the way I speak to my kids, I talk to them about like, this, whatever it is, like packaged food, like look at all the stuff that's in it. And they actually make this so you want more and more and more of it. And that's how they're just trying to get you to spend more money. And they're like, yeah, that's not fair. I'm like, yeah, I think we need to get angry about this. And teaching them. And it's not about restriction. It's really like balancing that healthy relationship with food, but like quality products. Whether it is skincare, makeup, quality food, quality sleep, that's kind of the message that I'm always giving. And then the other thing people say, well, it's more expensive. It's not. Like I stopped shopping at those, designer makeup and all that. And I shop at my health food store now. I'm spending way less and my skin's never looked better. Like, and if it is like certified organic produce can be more expensive, but it might just be then washing your fruit and veggies really well in a bicarb if you're not. So there's always ways to make it work.
Yeah. I agree. As I feel, ever since I've moved to the United States, you can only imagine how many people have come at me being like, what are you doing there? You can't eat healthy there. And I'm like, first of all, it's everywhere. I've lived in Australia. I've lived in Italy. The ingredients that you can't recognize are all over both countries. And I've traveled a lot and I've seen it a lot everywhere. So I think it does come back to, once again, the education, the awareness, and you putting in the time and effort and making it a priority and going and doing the research. And it's not even that much research at the end of the day, just to look at the ingredients and do you know them? Do they look like a science project? Like at the end of the day, it's really that. And personally, like living in Florida, like there's so many farms around here and small businesses that I can go to and be like, oh, it's mango season. I'm going to get some mangoes, and work with the seasons.
It's such a beautiful energy to be in. And like, I just know, like when I go to the farmer's market and then when I'm cooking with that produce that I've bought there, like I just feel happy inside.
Yeah.
Like, it's just such a beautiful energy. And yeah, you don't need to know that much. Like I don't know a lot about all the additives and ingredients. I can look it up if I want to. And there's really good apps now, but and it's just, for me, I just make quick decisions. I look at like, what are the options, which is going to be the best option out of these 3 or 4 that are on the shelf right now. Good, let's get that one. And I know all these little decisions add up and they make a huge difference when it comes to our toxic load, when it comes to our health. Yeah, I see it all the time and I've seen it for myself. Like I think it's been 10 years that I've been living low tox and just making small changes. And yeah, it's life-changing.
It's the little things every day that compound over time. And so before my last question to you, is there like so my final question is a question that I ask everybody that comes on my podcast, no matter what their background is. So I'll come to that in a second. But is there like a final message that you would share to, especially, women that maybe are hearing this for the first time? Maybe they are exhausted. Maybe they're starting to realize symptoms that they have that may be connected to this. Maybe they're stuck in the day-to-day grind. What's like one final message that you would share?
Yeah, and I guess when it comes to seed cycling, when you're listening to it, like I want it to be a hell yes for you. And I see that for women when I'm introducing it, it's like a hell yes in your stomach. Like, I don't know how, I really need to know more. And I'm not sure, the ins and outs or how I start or whatever it else, but it just feels like yes. So if you're getting that yes, or even just that tiny bit of a yes, this is refreshing, this is different, this is what I need, then you can reach out to us. I have so many free resources on the website. So we've got like a quiz which will help you work out how to seed cycle for you. We have like cookbooks, because that's another thing, is like, well, how do I add the seeds? Well, I'm going to show you so many ways. You're never going to get bored of adding the seeds in. We've got resources. I've got a whole page dedicated to the science and research, because that's a whole other thing, particularly research that has come out recently for seed cycling and PCOS. So do a deep dive on the research, and I guess then like you can connect in with our community as well, which is amazing. And sometimes it does take seeing some of that evidence as well of like, I was like, the case studies which we can share and the real people, real results. And this is really sorting things out, especially hormones now, is just going to set you up for the future. And once you know, then you can do better. And like, you can't go back. It's like, once you're a moon gal, you're always a moon gal. Like,
this is true.
Yeah.
I love it. And thank you. I'll make sure to have all the links down below. And all right, you ready for a question?
I'm nervous. What is it going to be?
It's okay. There's no right answer.
Okay.
How do you feel about Bitcoin?
How do I feel about Bitcoin? The only thing I know about Bitcoin is that I think it was Bitcoin. My husband lost the password and we can't get in, and he reckons that there's all this money sitting there and there's like no, is this correct? And there's like no way of getting in if you've lost it.
When did he buy it?
8 or 9 years ago. And then we moved house and we've lost, and he's told me like there is no way that we can actually access it.
Yeah. You're like, I have a lot of it and it's just sitting there and I can't access it. And if I could access it, I might be really extra rich.
Yeah. But he doesn't seem too worried about it. I'm like, what do you mean?
If he had it on like a hardware storage or it's called a decentralized wallet, he would need to have what's called a recovery phrase. And if he doesn't have his recovery phrase, I believe it is impossible to get into. I mean, I don't like to use the word impossible because never say never. And I have seen like hackers that I think people have paid like lots of money to people to try and hack their ones because they were in a similar scenario where they lost it. And so, if your husband has any questions and he wants to revisit, I'd be more than happy to help in any way that I can. Maybe we can recover it if it's not a recovery phrase.
I'm going to call him and be like, hey, remember
Bitcoin? I mean, if you bought it 8 years ago, what are we in now? 2024. So that would have been 2016. You probably bought Bitcoin either in the hundreds or the like 1000s, and that's US dollars. And now I just saw earlier, Bitcoin's at 90,000 Australian dollars. I love to ask because I get such different responses, but I do like to educate people that in 3 simple things. 1, Bitcoin, you can just view it as a digital currency that we can't physically hold, and anybody in the world can have access to it and participate in it as long as they have the internet connection, an internet connection and a phone. 2, it is what we call a deflationary asset. So because it has a limited amount, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin in the world. Unlike our fiat currencies that continue to just get printed out and we have this beautiful thing called inflation, Bitcoin is deflationary because it has a limited cap. And then the third thing is that it is what we call decentralized, meaning that there's no central authority that runs or governs Bitcoin. and it's person to person, and it's bringing power back to the people. So you now know a little bit more about Bitcoin.
Yes.
Oh boy. Well, I hope that we can figure out how to get your Bitcoin back. And
see, this was meant to be. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. You've helped my hormones. I hope to help your bank account.
Please.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you for the time and the value that you have brought here today. And I look forward to learning more, having more experiences myself, and also with tapping. I'm sure we can do this again.
Oh, sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved chatting with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.